Today on X-Play. Moogles.
Is she ready?
Chocobos. And men that look like women.
Really?
All Final Fantasy, all the time. It's X-Play, Koopo.
Prepare to be reviewed.
Adam Sessler. Morgan Webb.
Prepare to be reviewed.
Prepare to be reviewed. This is X-Play.
The only television hosts who've killed a Tonberry, it's Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb.
Hello and welcome to X-Play. You are joining us on a very special occasion, our celebration of all things Final Fantasy.
Whoa. I thought we hated Final Fantasy.
No, we hate Final Fantasy fanboys. Totally different thing.
Okay, so it's still okay for me to hate guys who dress up as Riku.
Yeah, it's actually a job requirement. Did you read the employee handbook?
I can't read. Anyway, we'll be reviewing today the only third-person shooter that is proven to induce severe nausea and stomach cramping. And that's Final Fantasy VII, Dirge of Cerberus.
And we'll check out the game that'll be fogging up your Nintendo DS screens this fall, Final Fantasy III. I wonder how you're going to use the stylus.
And later in the show, we'll find out if politics can be fun when we present our review of Final Fantasy XII.
But first up, we have a very special installment of Spoiler Theater. See, normally we only like to ruin the ending of one game at a time, but since there's about a zillion Final Fantasies, we figured why not just do all of them at once? Prepare yourselves for Spoiler Theater Final Fantasy Edition.
If you leave anything out for too long, it tends to spoil. With over 15 years sitting out to ripen, the Final Fantasy series has been the staple of gaming geeks, the ambrosia of the emo, the litmus test of the lame. And it's just about time that we spoiled the whole lot of them. It's time for a series Spoiler Theater Final Fantasy Edition. In the beginning, there was light, imps, and not much else going on between 8 bits of graphics. After defeating the Wind Fiend in the Sky Castle, the 4 nameless heroes are thrown back 200 years into the past by the Archdemon Chaos, who takes over Garland's body, causing a time paradox which makes everyone forget that they ever existed. Funny, same thing happened to Avril Lavigne. 2. What would a wacky band of kids do? Go to hell! 3's getting a little nip and tuck for a Nintendo DS remake due at the end of the year, so we won't go on revealing this titillating tidbit of information, but I will say this. You killed this guy. 4 brought us our first taste of fan favorites like active battle systems, spoony bards, and an epic battle in the center of the moon to fight your brother for control of a powerful crystal. Yeah, at least we got a new battle system out of it. 5. Well, there's this wizard who was defeated, but he lived in a tree, and I've stopped caring. But 6 is where they pull out one of the most flamboyant and cutthroat of all Final Fantasy bosses to prance around. You'll face Kefka and the full force of his Esper army in his tower in the sky. Terra wins the war but loses the battle with the death of the Espers and her father. Final Fantasy VII, your sweet chords still sing out beyond the passing of time, and like a slow and trembling kiss, this is how the game ends. Eris dies. She's dead. Stop demanding spin-offs because she's not coming back in any of them. 8, the sensible Final Fantasy. You know, the one where Squall makes a deal with a scientist to allow a mad sorceress who resides in the future to take control of his daughter to open a time compression hole to battle said future sorceress in her era where he must fight his friend and kill a sorcerer from the past? Yeah, maybe this isn't the sensible fantasy. After stopping Kuja in 9 from taking over the life crystal, he kills everyone and you face death. Maybe 8 was the sensible one. 10, almost done. Having wiped the floor with dear old dad, you're sent inside of Sin to defeat the Eons and release the spirits still roaming the world. So Riku was like, you have hems like a flower girl, and Yuna was like, yeah, at least I didn't dress for like a summer camp refugee. Wait, that's Project Runway. No one finished 10-2. No one with any sense of dignity anyway. And 11, I'm gonna say it's an MMO and slowly walk away. So there you have it. If Final Fantasy has taught us anything, it's that we can look forward to a fairly interesting storyline followed by trips to hell, the center of the moon, flamboyant costumes, and little girls opening portals.
You know, I can already smell the hate mail from spoiler-phobic geeks across the world.
I can't wait. Unfortunately, waiting is something that Final Fantasy fans have become accustomed to over the years.
After all this time, you think that the RPG factory known as Square Enix would have brought every Final Fantasy game stateside, but you know what? You'd be wrong.
Way back in 1990, Final Fantasy III came out in Japan, but much like whale meat Lunchables and sentient toilets, it never made its way to American store shelves. Well, that's all about to change. This fall, a remake of the game is hitting the Nintendo DS, and here is the trailer for Final Fantasy III.
Now, this remake of Final Fantasy III came out in Japan this past August, and it sold over 500,000 copies in the first week. In fact, it's done so well that Square Enix is now considering remaking other Final Fantasy games.
Oh, good. There aren't enough of those out.
Yay.
Guy or girl!
Final Fantasy Edition. Vaughn, the hero of the latest installment, is looking good.
Really?
Looking good for a 12-year-old eunuch, that is.
So young.
Can you guess the gender of this wannabe sky pirate? Stay tuned, because after the break, we'll uncover the awful truth.
In a moment, Dirge of Cerberus, and later, Final Fantasy XII on X-Play.
Guy or girl!
What do you think? If you guessed that Vaughn was female, you're close, but still wrong. He's all man.
Josh von Rotzenberg of Dalmat.
Still perfecting their limit breaks, it's Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb.
My limit break is going to be called the Judgmentator. Welcome back to X-Play, the only video game review show on television that... Well, actually, I think this is the only video game review show on television.
Earlier this year, Square Enix released a spin-off to their most popular game, Final Fantasy VII. Unfortunately, it turned out to be just as terrible as its name. Dirge of Cerberus sort of sounds like a goth band, but here's our review of Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus.
A dirge is a somber song expressing sorrow or grief. Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus is a plotting game that causes me sorrow and grief. Set 3 years after Final Fantasy VII, the RPG that was emo before emo was emo, this action spin-off is primarily an exercise in the unnecessary.
I'm so sorry.
You can't apologize until we've recounted your crimes. Dirge of Cerberus is pretty much Devil May Cry gone retarded. Vincent Valentine will be your poor man's Dante for this trip through the 9 circles of what the f*** are you facing that way? Turn around, you idiot, gaming hell.
For 10 years, I lived in hell far deeper.
What, you've been playing Final Fantasy VII that long?
How appropriate is that?
Never mind that the aiming is sketchy. Vincent moves like a Galapagos tortoise on Quaaludes, and the camera seems to be a blood relation of the cool pics I dropped in the toilet last year and is here to wreak digital vengeance. Dirge of Cerberus is so totally in love with its own storyline, it won't even let you play.
Behold mighty chaos.
Fourth-tier background character says what? You have to watch a cutscene roughly every 15 seconds. Kill 3 guys. Time to stop playing for a bit.
Thank you.
Kill 4 more, put the controller down again. In the middle of action sequences, the game will cut away to some random little scene, just in case you were worried about these insipid characters for some reason. To be fair, that's pretty good for a one-armed scientist with no depth perception. You can't even make it through a boss fight without a damn cinematic rearing its non-interactive head. No wonder the game doesn't play well. Why spend time refining something the player is hardly ever gonna see? At the very least, Vincent is about 10 times more badass in the cutscenes than he is in the actual game. Why can't he do that when I control him? My favorite part? The scenes where Chatty McDon'tCare and the rest of the cardboard cutouts babble and Vincent is completely forgotten for minutes on end. There was potential for a good action game here. Vincent is a cool character for a Final Fantasy side quest, and Devil May Cry has proven that a guy in a red outfit with a gun can kick substantial ass. The gun customization is worth exploring, and it's actually fun to see some of the old Final Fantasy stuff in 3D.
That was a close one! Never was good at fighting!
Why does he have a Scottish brogue? But unless you feel compelled to experience everything Final Fantasy VII related, you can safely give Dirge of Cerberus a pass.
I want absolutely no part of it.
Sorry, Vincent, there's just not much meat on this dog's bone.
I'm the one who should apologize.
No argument here. A 2 out of 5.
How could a company that brought us great games like Chrono Trigger wind up laying an egg like that one?
It's a sad day, but on the bright side, a review of Final Fantasy XII is still on its way.
And if you're still thirsty for more, check out the special section of our webpage, The Best of Final Fantasy on XPlay.
We compiled all of our award-losing Final Fantasy coverage into one bright, shiny package, including previews, reviews, and a roundup of all the games in the series. You should check it out at g4tv.com/XPlay.
Guy or girl?
Final Fantasy Edition. Lamont.
Please allow me to accompany you.
This tag-along from Final Fantasy XII is a master of disguise who leaves us wondering about his or her gender.
I might also say with you.
You can ask, but a lady never tells. Find out the sex of this character after the break.
Up next, a preview of Final Fantasy XIII, and later, our review of Part 12 on XPlay.
Guy or girl?
Pencils down, gamers. Did you think Lamont was a girl?
Actually, no.
Turns out he's actually male. Don't feel bad, we were confused too. He has such beautiful skin. Are we still recording?
They share joint custody of a Moogle. It's Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb.
Fortunately, I left the Moogle in the back seat of a cab, and I still blame myself. Welcome back to XPlay and our celebration of all things Final Fantasy. Now, as you'd probably expect, the veteran role-playing series is planned out quite a bit in advance, and they're probably already working on Part 29.
And even though the paint on 12 is still drying, we've already scored a preview of the next installment, Final Fantasy XIII.
You know, they keep saying that it's the Final Fantasy, and yet here we are, 13 chapters in and still going strong. In Final Fantasy XIII for the PS3, it looks like they've upped the action. Watch as this hot anime babe stylishly takes out a train full of bad guys. See what happens when you forget your MTA pass? Not much is known about whether the game uses the same active battle system we glimpsed in Part 12, but we do know that the footage you're seeing now is supposedly rendered in real time by PS3 hardware. Maybe it is almost worth $600. Almost. SquareEnix has already announced that they're releasing an action-based spin-off game which takes place in the same universe called Final Fantasy Versus 13. It's too soon to say exactly what it's all about, but with a name like that, it's safe to say there's plenty more butt-kicking in store. As you can probably tell, the trailer is a bit short on actual information, but here's a recap of what we've learned. It features a pink-haired character who looks a bit like Yuna from Part 10. It has tons of fast-paced action and improbable physics. And it has trains. Lots and lots of futuristic trains. There's no official release date set, but we'll have a lot more info on Final Fantasy XIII for you soon. Now start working on those cosplay outfits, fanboys.
You know, you'd think that in the future they'd have a mode of transportation cooler than trains, like a robot chocobo or a fuel-efficient airship.
But you know what? Final Fantasy games, they don't take place in the future. They take place in a fictional reality where intergalactic space travel is possible, yet everyone still takes turns hitting each other.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Guy or girl? Final Fantasy Edition. Tidus. This frisky blonde is the protagonist from Final Fantasy X. Hobbies include blitzball, chocobo riding, and looking exactly like Meg Ryan.
I know.
Can you guess the gender, gamers? We'll find out after the break.
Moments away, our review of Final Fantasy XII.
Guy or girl? If you guessed Tidus was a girl, you're wrong. If you guessed Tidus was a guy, you're still wrong. He's actually an ethereal metaphysical projection caused by a time rift from an ancient civilization. Choke on that, gamers.
Still getting paid in hit points, it's Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb.
We really got to renegotiate.
Yeah.
I'd like to get paid in gil.
Now, we first played Final Fantasy XII at E3 in 2004, and back then it was supposed to come out last year.
Well, life doesn't always work out the way you plan it.
No.
That's why we're on expanded cable.
Enough talk. Let's find out if it was worth the wait in our review of Final Fantasy XII.
You know what? I hate to admit it, but I sort of missed that music. Over the years, we've come to associate the words Final Fantasy with a lot of different things. Giant chickens. Androgyny.
I know it.
And terrible pop music. But we've never really felt like the actual games lived up to the hype. Well, we're happy to report that Final Fantasy XII is the real deal. The main character this time is Vaughn, a disturbingly girlish street urchin from the peaceful country of Dalmasca.
Nice to meet you.
When his homeland is attacked and the king is assassinated, Van has to team up and save the world with your usual assortment of good-looking rogues.
I play the leading man. Who else?
Rebellious princesses.
Don't interrupt me. I'm thinking.
And Icelandic playboy bunnies.
Have you finished?
For the record, that race of long-eared women is called Viera, and I haven't had such impure thoughts about a rabbit since Bugs Bunny dressed in drag. Childhood is confusing. Unlike other Final Fantasy games, this installment doesn't feature a sappy melodramatic love story.
I like it better that way.
Believe me, so do we. This is a story of high-minded political intrigue with really cool airship battles. And don't worry, folks, we won't spoil any more of the games involving storyline.
Wouldn't you rather see for yourself? Of course.
If you haven't already noticed, Final Fantasy XII is freaking gorgeous.
It is magnificent.
The cutscenes are feature film quality, and the locales are rendered with an almost unheard of level of detail. Every nook and cranny of the game is absolutely teeming with life. But like every great piece of art, Part 12 is no stranger to controversy. When fans found out that SquareEnix replaced the turn-based battles with a combat system similar to those found in online RPGs like EverQuest, pasty-faced geeks everywhere went ballistic. Well, we have good news. The combat system in Part 12 blows away the fighting setup from every other Final Fantasy game. Trust us, once you get the hang of it, you will never want to go back.
You're in good hands.
As an added bonus, that means no more random encounters. You'll actually be able to see your enemies walking around the battlefield. If you want to fight them, run up and start whacking away. If not, you can keep on walking. It's that simple, people.
Ready.
Our only complaint is the overly complicated license system. Allow me to explain. You see, when you acquire a new item like a fancy shield, you can't simply use it right away. You'll first have to earn a license to use it, using license points that you earn in battle.
It's annoying.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's it for the technical mumbo-jumbo. Like every Final Fantasy game, the outfits are more homoerotic than 3 seasons of water polo.
Come on. What do you think?
I think we need to get you a shirt. But some cheesy costumes aren't enough to keep us from finally falling in love with this fantasy. It's one of the best RPGs we've played in a long, long time.
I thank you.
No, thank you. Final Fantasy XII gets a 5 out of 5.
Are we fully appreciating the magnitude of this moment? We, X-Play, are giving a Final Fantasy game a 5 out of 5.
It's really happening, Morgan. Yeah. Now, I assume the apocalypse is close at hand, and pretty soon Naruto and Dragon Ball Z games are going to start getting 5s.
I have my resignation papers at the ready.
Speaking of things to which we resign ourselves to, it's time for viewer mail. Today's viewer mail comes from Farley. Farley writes, Dear X-Play, I don't get it. Godzilla lays eggs, right? So why can't hamsters eat bacon without getting the measles? I would like to know what you think on the issue. Farley, that's not funny.
We get a lot of mail that believes it's funny in strange, quirky ways. It's almost never funny.
That's why, from now on, we're encouraging you all to come by g4tv.com/xplay to send us video viewer mail.
See, it'd probably be best if you tried to work out your material at a local open mic before you send it to us, but if you can, just send us the video viewer mail.
Well, this wraps up this very special episode of X-Play. Now, make sure that you tune in for our next themed episode, devoted entirely to Blinks the Time Sweeper.
That's a joke, right?
Blinks! He's magical. He's got, like, sweeping up time.
That will never, ever, ever
Blinks!
score.